So welcome everybody who is here. Today we are in the meeting innovation community. So for those of you who are new to this community, we are an open free community dedicated to spreading excellent meetings to teams everywhere through experimental events, shared resources, research projects, which thank you to everybody in the DC area that participated in our research project last night. And for those of you who have not yet participated, oh my gosh, do we have opportunities coming up? And the community forums, where you'll find all kinds of conversations going on about things people are trying, experiments, questions, and whatnot. So if you are interested in this particular community, you can contribute by participating, which you are doing right now. Hooray, thank you. We also invite other experimental events from anybody who has one that they're willing to try out. So we look for things that are advances in meeting leadership or facilitation, new technologies, or just, conversations about something you'd like to see how to make work as the world of work around us changes. And then finally, because it is free to join, but not free to run, if you would like to make a contribution to the MIC, that was always very welcome. Today, our specific purpose is to see how AI might be a bionic friend or a potential existential threat. So, thank you, Maggie. Which, with Lee Gimpel here, will be our facilitator, and hopefully by the end of today, you'll have some experience with ChatGPT in its new overlord role, and some fun with critical uncertainty. So it's a liberating structure for those of you who are not familiar with it, and an awareness of what's coming down the pipe of the world of work and what that might mean for you. Welcome everybody who just joined us. So before I turn this over to Lee, I'm going to post in the chat one more time. Because every one of these events is experimental, we like to collect feedback. So I'm sure Lee will be asking for your opinion many times throughout, but I'd also love for you to go ahead and open our feedback link right now. So should something happen and you have to leave in an outrage, or because your children are noisy or whatever's going on, you'll have that link sitting right in front of you, and you will go ahead and give us feedback as soon as you're ready. That'll be an anonymous feedback link. For example, at 10:30, Nancy White will be filling out her feedback link. And with that, Mr. Lee Gimpel, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Elise, who was Taffy something last night, and I couldn't call her by her real name. So it feels it's a relief to be able to call her Elise. So welcome, and thank you to Elise and to the MIC, for having us and hosting us. And, I guess many of you already know who I am. I know a number of you, which is fun to see some friendly faces there. So I'm not going to do much of an intro for myself. I may just drop in a bio link or something like that. But I'm in DC, run a company called Better Meetings. And basically my preoccupation lately has been, how does AI mash up with this thing that I do called facilitation? So that's what we're talking about here. It's better than me confronting friends who are not facilitators at cocktail parties and talking to them about it. So you guys are all here to help me scratch that itch. The first thing that I would ask you is, if you have an account on Bard or ChatGPT or one of these other generative AI platforms and would be willing to, like in a small group, breakout group here today, sort of share that and help people, see what's going on. If you could just put a little asterisk in your name. I think I saw Nancy maybe had one. Lisa's got one. There's a couple of you that have that, but our goal is to try and get it so that we have one person at least per breakout room that can say, let's pull this up on ChatGPT and actually work with it and play with it a little bit. What I dropped into the chat, and I'll do it again here for some folks that just came in, are 4 of them that you should be able to get to relatively quickly and easily. And if you are able to get onto one of them and you can update your little name, basically that saves me 5 minutes in a breakout room trying to get us all in there and get enough so that we can all demo this and avoid the thing that we all know as facilitators is a terrible recipe, which is one person just talks the whole time and we don't actually get to play with this stuff. So that's what we're trying to do. So the next thing that I would like to do, rather than just do a little poll of who has experience with this, I think it's just interesting in terms of where we are in the world of AI today, to just get a sense for like who's in the room, where we are with this stuff. So I'm going to do a chat storm, which is what I call it. And Elise, you call it, what'd you call it? Chat bomb, chatterfall. We used some other term last night.
Chat burst, I think. Yeah.
Chat burst. Yeah.
Chatterfall,
Okay.
all those things, right?
So many of you in here probably already know what that is, but if not, no biggie. Basically, I'm going to ask you that question. And the question is, where are you with AI and facilitation, or those two things? Who you are, why you're here, just any of that kind of stuff as an introduction. You're going to type it in the chat, but you are going to wait until we give you this 3, 2, 1 countdown, and then we're all going to hit enter at the same time. I anticipated this moment, so this is basically the instructions in the chat and an example of what it will look like. So who you are, do you have lots of experience with AI? Are you brand new? Either one is cool. Also, if somebody in the room is like a super expert, I would like to not ignore that and try and tap into that if I could. So take a minute or two, just type in kind of whatever you want related to the topic. Hold on to it, hold on to it, hold on to it. And we're going to hit enter all at the same time in just a minute. Someone's going to hit it too early. It's fine, but try and hold on. As I expected, there's a wide spectrum of AI experience here. Good to see some of you. Keith, I see that you were a liberating structures guy. That's underselling it, perhaps. We're going to sort of talk through what AI is and try and use some of these tools. Again, I'm just going to keep plugging on you that if you haven't used any of these yet, and please, somebody sign into one of those things and add an asterisk to your name so we can try and break this up across groups. So let's see here. What do I want to talk through here? Yeah, I guess just quickly, you all signed up for this, you all saw it, so you all kind of know what's here, but I just want to talk about, partially this is a little of like what AI is, but not so much. It's really more specific to how this affects facilitation. And on one side, I think like I'm calling it a bionic friend, and I think that pops up in some of the chat storm, helping us create agendas, helping us write reports, like lots of that stuff. I think the divergent side of brainstorming is really good with this. And then the existential threat of, could this do a lot of the job that we are doing? And when I say we, I mean facilitators. And if you don't have facilitator on your business card, but you lead groups or meetings, or that's a big part of the job that you do, then I think that speaks to you. If you are a fireman or something and you're on this call, I don't know what you're doing here, but that's not what we're talking about today. So quickly, I'm going to try and get through kind of the meat of what I'm doing, which is going to be looking at critical uncertainties, which is a liberating structure as kind of a case study scenario. And then I'm going to try and take a little break, maybe after about an hour, and then do the second, 30 minutes or 20 minutes or so, and do a deeper dive into pros and cons of AI with respect to facilitation. That's basically what we're looking at. So challenges, pros, cons, ramifications, all that stuff. Let's see here. I am just going to count. Maybe if we could have like 1 or 2 more people try and get into one of those platforms again. Let me give it to you one more time. I know it sounds annoying and repetitive, but it's going to be way more fun if we get people in a breakout room that can use one of these. And honestly, after this, if you haven't used this stuff before, you're going to probably want to keep using these things, I think. So, or I don't know, like hide under your bed, one of the one of the two. Okay, so let's see here. The first thing I was going to do was ask somebody what critical uncertainties is and if they have used it and if they know what liberating structures is. And I'm feeling somewhat self-conscious. There are a bunch of people on this call that I think know this stuff really quite well. So rather than ask you, I'm just going to tell you. Liberating structures is I'm going to say, a facilitation methodology. It has 33-ish structures. They are microstructures. They're small. They're easy to build on one another. I really love it. It's probably the core of the work that I use every day. I think it's very approachable. I know some of you have Lisa's there and some other folks that have gone through it. And critical uncertainties is like a future forecasting, scenario planning kind of facet to liberating structures. And I'm choosing it because I did a big training for a bunch of folks not so long ago. And then I was playing around with AI and I thought, you know, this is like a pretty complicated one. It has a lot of steps, has a lot of different components to it. I think AI could handle something simple. Could it handle something that's like pretty involved? So I chose critical uncertainties, and that's what we're going to be working through today. The spoiler alert that I would tell you after, what's going to happen, I think after 60 minutes is, I think the AI does a pretty good job of understanding it, of walking us through it, of coming up with content, in lieu of what our group might come up with or assisting our group. So like, that's what I think will happen. I mean, I've already run it, so I know what happens, but I think that's what you think. That's what I think that you may think will happen afterwards. This being recorded, Elise. Oh my God. This is critical uncertainties. And there's a link to it in there. Keith, if I may, I would say it is maybe a microstructure, but it is more a macrostructure than a microstructure next to some of the other like much smaller components of liberating structures, right? So I wanted something that was meaty and big and sort of hard to tackle. So what is generative AI? I think there are people on this call that could probably answer that way better than I could, but I will say the generative part of it is what is important. It's artificial intelligence, but it is generating something new, maybe based on lots of other stuff and sort of the cumulative work of humanity, but it is something new. And how it works to me is magic. I've read a lot about it and it's still really incredible magic. But the example I would give you is when Google came out, I was able to do this thing where I would say, Google, here are the things that I have in my refrigerator. Is there a recipe out in the world that might use a lot of those things? And Google would say, yeah, there's some blog and they've got a lot of the things that you have. That's a pretty good recipe for you to try. But it wasn't custom to me. It was basically Google saying this thing already exists. I'm going to send you to that. If I type the same thing into ChatGPT or some other generative AI platform, I say, here are the ingredients that I have. I have these 7 ingredients. I want to use some or all of them. I want it to be Indian inspired. I want it to be vegetarian. I want it to be able to feed 4 people, and it needs to be ready in 17 minutes and can't involve more than 4 steps. And ChatGPT, just like that, says, here's a recipe. I've generated one for you. I've created a custom recipe just for you, maybe built on thousands of other people's recipe and maybe other, intellectual property that we don't know where it's pulling that from, but like it's brand new to me, basically, right? And so that's what we're going to be doing today in a way, is we're using it to generate something. It's not a search engine, it's generative AI here. And let's see. I think what I want you to do, Elise, if you can start putting folks in breakout rooms where there's like 1 asterisk per room, and it's maybe ideally 3 people, but maybe 4 people per room. I just want you all to try this out and see it and hopefully come back and be like, I get it. That makes so much sense. And it's kind of fun, or it blew my mind, or I'm going to go hide under the bed, right? So I'm going to let me drop these instructions in the chat. Okay. We're not going to be creating an agenda. I think Nancy, you said you had used it for agendas and stuff. I just want people to sort of see that. I think it's a good use case for it. So what I want you to do when you get into your group is I want you to say, hey, ChatGPT or Bard or one of these other ones that I've given you. I need to create a 1-day strategic planning retreat or 1-day retreat for this group of clients. Can you give me that agenda and tell me what the steps are and what's included? I'm not giving you an exact prompt. I just want you all to like sort of make one up, but I want you to think about who is this group? What are you trying to accomplish? How many of you are there? Is it all in person? I think I gave you an example of like a group of clowns versus a small nonprofit or something like that. I don't want you to like be a group and overthink this and try and come up with a perfect prompt. I just want somebody to type in a prompt, see what it generates, and then say, great, thank you so much, ChatGPT. Can you adjust it and give us more breaks? Can you make lunch longer? Can you start at 10 o'clock? Can you, something like that you can sort of tweak it and then maybe tweak it again and tweak it again. Elise, let's give them 7 minutes. And if you get in there and you're willing to share and screen share, that would be great. Again, don't try and like have a group discussion about what the perfect prompt is. Just put something good in and keep tweaking it. Hope that makes sense. Does it make sense before I send you out there? I feel like I'm rushing to get to the meat of this, but questions before I send you out there? Okay. I see thumbs up, virtual and real. Elise, how we doing?
We're all set. Heads up, folks who are in the breakouts. There are some people who are mysteriously dark, which means they are not actually in a place to actively participate. So don't poke them too hard. Okay. All right. Have fun. 7 minutes.
Thank you all. I think they are. Okay.
Yep.
We don't really have time for a debrief. I'm not really going to debrief it, but I'm going to ask maybe one person from one group to just volunteer. And hopefully you're going to tell me it was great and amazing, but maybe you're not. One person from one group. How was that? What did you come up with? Was it new and different? What did you think?
I can share. Do you want me to share my screen?
No, that's all right. You can just talk through it, Nancy.
I worked with Hella and Mayor was on too. And we came up with such a great agenda. We gave some constraints right up front. And then we'd say, okay, when you say group activities, what do you mean by that? What are examples for visioning? And it gave us a whole ton. And what do you mean about this? How would we do the action plan review? And it gave us some really good tips. So it was like blindingly fast.
Yeah, I mean, it has like the capacity. I have all these books over here, some of them by people on this call, which is fun. And I read them, but I don't know them all by heart. But to have something that you can just tap into and you're like, give me all the, scenario planning stuff. It all comes up. Yeah, amazing. I lied. One more person. Someone else want to share? Thank you, Nancy.
I'll go.
Yeah.
What was great is that it just generates a great basic facilitator's agenda to start, even though we didn't have that many details. So just to have that to work from seems great. Nancy, we didn't get to that point. I think that would be a great idea to really probe at a lot of the details, but it sets you up for success.
Yeah. And I would say for the folks who are here on this call, not knowing all of you, but I think it's where you get to add that value in of like, okay, you gave me do scenario planning, but like, what do you mean by that? And for how long? And, you just keep pushing. And the more you keep pushing, it becomes clearer and clearer. Okay. So I told you, we're not going to go over that. That was really just let's see what generative AI is and how it works and kind of get a flavor from it. I want to actually walk through using critical uncertainties here. And again, sort of future forecasting, scenario planning. We would use it to say, should I show you what no, I'll just tell you. So the basic scenario is I have a company. Our company is trying to figure out how we can prepare for the future. We don't necessarily know what the future is, but we know that the future may be one of a variety of future possible scenarios. So this process helps us envision, in this case, like 4 different scenarios. And then we look for some sort of commonalities and some big picture trends and stuff that come out of that. So, there's a lot going on and it's super helpful. I've done it. I did it with a big international, like Fortune, whatever, 100 company. And I worked with their R&D team. So they're like a pretty sophisticated group. And I did this with them and they were just like, wow, amazing. So it really does work and it's really lovely. And we're going to try and have the AI sort of help us through that. So the next, like maybe 10, 15 minutes, I'm just going to sort of show you some of the prompts. I've done it before. I'm doing it fresh. I'm not sure if it's going to generate the same stuff if it did that it did before. If not, we're going to switch back to Lee's Word document where he's just copied everything from before. So we'll get a sense for it. And this part, unfortunately, is I don't do a lot of just screen share and watch, but I just want to see, I want you to see the logic as we build through this. So, okay. Here we go. Thumbs up if you can see the screen share. Does it work for you? Okay. And can you read the screen share? Like, is it big? Okay, cool. All right. So this is what it looks like. I have the pro version, so I can choose 3.5 or GPT-4. I don't know that it matters here. I'm on GPT 3.5. It's just a chat window, right? You've just seen this. And I say, in essence, hey, we're a small company. We're looking for some help. Can you, as ChatGPT, play the role of a facilitator? And I've been using this prompt at the end, just saying like, do you understand? Because sometimes ChatGPT gets like really excited and it's like, yes, I can. And then it just like builds and builds and builds and it does all this work. And you're like, yeah, that is not what I wanted you to do. So I just basically try and stop it and then build a logic chain. So I hit return, I hit return. There it is. And, it says, look, know that I'm not an actual professional facilitator, but yeah, I'm gonna try. So the next thing I'm gonna say is who we are, to give it some context. And who we are in this case is a small pizza restaurant in Arlington, Virginia, just over the river here from where I am in Washington, DC. We have about $1 million in annual sales. We're a group of 10 people. Our goal is to ensure that everyone who works at the restaurant can earn a living wage for the next 10 years. And then again, I'm just saying, like, don't go crazy. Just let me tell you what's going on. Try this again. Okay. Cool. All right. So at this point, I'm not a computer programmer, but like I'm filling the database. I'm trying to give it the context instead of just saying, hey, generate a 1-day retreat for us. I'm trying to tell it why we're doing this and help it build. And now I say, you're a facilitation expert. You must know about liberating structures, obviously, right, ChatGPT? And there we go. So it says that's what it is. This is where some of these questions of intellectual property come up. Like, where does that information come from? Who owns it? And all that stuff. Good question. Okay. So then I'm trying to get more specific here. Whether or not you need to build this logic chain in the way that I'm doing, or we could just jump right to, hey, can you run critical uncertainties for me, is a question, but I'm trying to build it so you all see where it's coming from. So I say, you know who we are, you know what liberating structures is. I put everything in context. And then I say, there's this one specific activity that I want you to focus on. Do you know about that? Or do we have to like teach you about that? So I say, do you know about critical uncertainties? Okay. Does that? Okay. Lots. Okay. I don't know that it's important that you read everything that it comes up with, but basically it has a sense for what we're talking about here. And I say, and can you outline the actual steps? Like, sort of does that. But I'm trying to put it in the context of like, if you were facilitating this, how would you do it? Hit and return. Okay. So I think it's a little off the rails here. Like it's not it's maybe not giving me it in the same way that I would want when I did it the first time. But I'm just going to kind of keep pushing through here and see if it'll work through. So like it's given me, this list of, form small groups, identify uncertainties, share and refine. So like, okay, it's given us a roadmap here. And so now I'm going to say, again, in the role of this expert, robot facilitator, will you just ask us questions, right? So this is what got me thinking about this and why I called up Elise and said, I have to share this because this is blowing my mind. I said, is it possible that for this like pretty complicated thing that people pay me like a little bit of money to come into a room and do, could ChatGPT replace me? Should I be worried? And so I'm basically asking it to like kind of be Alexa or something and just like help our group walk through this. Okay. And at this point, I want to tell you, I know many of you in this room do this professionally. You know that when you walk into a room and you get paid like a not insubstantial amount of money to do this work, you might be a 10 out of 10 and 9 out of 10. You're really helping these groups. You're great, right? We know that the regular bar for what these groups are often used to is like a 2 out of 10, right? Like if they can get through stuff in like an entire day that you could get them through in like 2 hours, they're happy, right? It's a very low bar. So I think between their very low bar and your very high bar, can ChatGPT fill some of this space, and should we be worried about that? So this is kind of where I'm building it as like a robot prompting us, right? Looks like a screen, but it could be sexier than a screen, right? So I say, you have all those steps. Could you just sort of ask us in order and we can put in information and you could like work with it? Keep hitting return. Okay. Okay. So I say, can you prompt us instead of just saying like, here's the whole list of 50 things to do. Can you tell us in order, right? And now, and I'm going to have you guys do a chat storm in just a moment to see if we can generate some ideas. So I ask you, what's the first step? Where do we start? It's to form small groups, right? Since you mentioned that you have a group of 10 people, it would be ideal to divide yourselves into smaller groups of 3 to 6 people each. Like I mostly agree with that, right? So I say, this is actually off the script. I don't know. I'm just going to say, okay, we did that. What's next? So within your small groups, I'd like each group to engage in a brainstorming discussion to identify critical uncertainties. And it, goes through all that. And now what I would like you all to do is we're going to do another chat storm. This is for us really here, not just watching. I'd like you all to participate because we're going to do a compare and contrast. Can you all, again, we're this small pizza shop. You all know what a pizza shop looks like. 10 people or, it's like $1 million in sales, one pizza shop. What are the critical uncertainties that confront us? Which are things that are super important to the success or the failure of this business, but also things that we cannot control. So for example, the economy, really important. If the economy goes up, we probably do well. If the economy goes down, we probably don't do well. Cost of mozzarella, right? We as a small pizza shop do not control that. Supply of labor, we don't control that, right? So again, chat storm style, just type some answers or some thoughts in the chat. Don't hit enter yet. What are, if you can come up with 5, that'd be great. 1, 2, 3, 10. What are things that are critical and uncertain for this pizza business? Hold on to it. Hold on to it. Don't hit enter yet. Give everybody a chance to think. We're actually doing this part, right? It's telling us to do it as a small group. We're sort of doing it as a small group. All right, let me give you another 10 seconds to finish up that last thing that you were typing. And let's see. Molly Daniels, would you want to give us a quick countdown in your beautiful forested background?
Sure. From the forest. 5,
Yes.
4, 3, 2, 1. Enter.
Thank you, Molly. Cool. All right. Lots of stuff that we would expect, right? Some interesting ones, super interesting ones. Oh, some other people who've showed up that I did not see before. Hello. Okay. So let me give you a scenario, true scenario. I was working with a group maybe 2 months ago. It was a pretty, I would say, sort of traditional, typical, association group. And we were trying to say, like, the world is changing. How would you change with the world? What new things would you come up with? And they were like, we could do a magazine. Right? And you're like, okay, but what else? It's 2023. I don't know if that's the answer. And they were just having a hard time. I mean, they were just not a group that was doing a lot of out of the box thinking, and we just didn't have a lot of time. And I know there are lots of ways to get people to think and engage. And Elise, I was on with our game storming friend last night. And like, there's lots of really good ways to get people to think out of the box, but it takes time. And also you have to sort of culturally build people into a place where they feel good about that. And we were just having a hard time with this particular group. I'm sure that happens to you sometimes. So it was hard, and we did not have lots of good ideas that came. Like, if we asked people to do this chat storm thing, we would not have gotten much. So here's this other thing that I think is super interesting about generative AI. Let's see, I already know what all my prompts are. I'm not actually responding. So this is what I thought I was going to do at this point. This is what I'm going to do at this point. I'm saying, ChatGPT, I've asked you to play the role of like robot facilitator to prompt us. You've been doing a good job of that. We broke up into our small groups. We tried to follow your instructions, but we're having a hard time. Can you help us out? Can you give us some suggestions as to what we should be thinking about and fill the vase, or the what am I trying to say? The vessel. That's what I'm trying to say. Fill the vessel for us. So that's my prompt is I say, and I don't just say some, I say, can you give us 20 ideas of things that are both critical and uncertain for our particular pizza business? Again, I don't know if it's going to stay on the tracks here, but let's see. So, okay, here's what I've asked it. And again, I would come back to this idea of generative AI. There's probably no website that exists today that if I asked Google, just to do a search, where I'd say, can you tell me what the critical uncertainties are for this specific pizza business in this specific scenario? It'd probably send me to a page to talk about, what things are uncertain or the economy. I don't know, but it wouldn't give me this custom list. So I'm not going to read through all of these, but government regulations, market competition, changing consumer preferences, fluctuations in price and availability of cheese, like, it's doing a pretty good job. And the thing with generative AI is that I asked it for 20. I could ask it for another 20 and another 20 after that and another 20 after that. And it doesn't roll its eyes, and it doesn't want to go for a break, and it just keeps spitting them out, right? So I think this piece is really, really valuable. And Lisa, question.
So Lee, one of the things as you're walking us through this, and I really appreciate it, the critical thing is, do you have a written script with your prompts that and have you played around with what? Because I mean, seriously, one of the things I at least understand is you have to get your prompts really well written for this AI generative process to work well.
Yes.
And that's what I'm sitting here going, you are not writing these except for that one that you just did quickly write. And while we were like, we're trying to do this. So that's the part where it's like tips that you have or anything like that, where it's like, or something along that line. Or is that another sidebar for another session?
No. I think it's a good question. I'm glad you asked it. Usually I'm like anti-question, but I'm okay with the questions. The first thing that I would say is I've been playing around with this a fair amount. I've been trying to use it like every day. I'm planning a trip for Italy, for example, and I'm just feeding it lots of things to help me like plan a trip for Italy. I mean, it's a true story. And it's just like wherever I can think about using this tool to practice on it for myself, I'm doing that. Elisa and I had a conversation the other day about how there are all these like stories about be a prompt engineer and earn $1 million. And I don't think those are like real things, but I do think being able to use the tool correctly is good. I did write those out beforehand, but I haven't really workshopped them. I basically stole them from what I'll show you in a moment is my original text that I just sat down, and it was like a Saturday morning and I woke up like kind of obsessed, and I was like, I'm just going to spend the next hour on ChatGPT. So I basically just lifted all those in order. I would say you have to be somewhat logical, and after a while you start to realize that if you're like 10 questions in and you're like, oh, I forgot to tell you that we're a Fortune 500 company as opposed to a small pizza shop, it's like, okay, right? But other than that, I think the real power, or one of the real powers of ChatGPT or this generation of AI, is the natural language is really pretty amazing. So you can be better at sort of using code language, like where I say generate this, or give me 20 instead of like have some, but it's pretty forgiving. And I think again, the bar is pretty low. So like to get a pretty good result isn't that hard. So I am copying and pasting mostly because it would take a long time to type out these sort of longer prompts, and you would just be watching me type, which isn't very fun. But yeah, they're not really workshopped beforehand, other than I thought about them the first time. So yeah, anyway, so it gives us 20. There is part of the, I'm going to sort of deviate from the script here where I'm just having it prompt us, and then I'm going to show you what I've done before, and then we're going to, try and get out of here in time, or break at 2:00. Even this goes till 2:30 Eastern, but to try and divide this into two sections. So ultimately what we're trying to do with critical uncertainties to come up with two really good critical uncertainties, like labor supply and the economy. I think, Lisa, we actually did this in the training, right? So like those are two really good ones. As a group, we're supposed to come up with that. Again, I'm having ChatGPT wear the hat of like robot overlord and also creative thinker within the group, helping us come up with these ideas like we just did. So the prompt I give it now is, and would you prioritize those suggestions in terms of the ones that are most important being at the top and those that are perhaps least important being at the bottom? I don't know what's coming. So it's a black box. I've asked it like, well, how do you come up with this? And it's like, basically, it says magic in essence. But it says market competition and government regulations are at the top. At the bottom, it puts market demand for organic, gluten-free, or other specialized dairy options and level of employment in the region. We can argue about this, and I think that's one of the things that I really like about using this in a sort of divergent part of creativity or creative brainstorming or something is we now have something to build on. We filled the vessel. We now as a group can debate these 20 things plus the ones that we all came up with as a group. But where I often find it difficult working with groups is they sit around and we take 20 or 30, we just take more time than we want to come up with that good list. I think it's much easier to throw darts at the dartboard sometimes than to build the dartboard. Just came up with that metaphor. Okay. So that's level of unemployment in the region down at the number 20. If we were following its suggestions, we would then create, an access with market competition, government regulations, and use those, right? I'm going to stop that for a moment. And at this point, I'm just going to ask if there are any questions, mostly while I try and load my saved thing and change screens. So any questions quickly while I'm doing that? Okay. Hella, is that Hella?
Yeah. Does it happen that people lose some sort of ownership of the idea creation?
I think that's possible. I haven't actually like brought this out with the group, although I really want to. I think this is part of the big question is, do we even need that group for a lot of this, right? Where you'll see that as I walk through, I mean, the document that I have that I created before is 30 pages of conversation between me and ChatGPT. And what I, in essence, asked it to do was to like replace us as that group of 10 people, that group of, whatever. I think the answer is yes. But I think part of the further answer here is that probably it's our role, at least for the next year or 5 years or something, to be part of that process and make people feel like they have that ownership, or to find a balance between, okay, you're actually making decisions. I'm not going to ask ChatGPT to rank those decisions. I'm going to have the group in the room do that. But yeah, I 100% think that's a real issue. And so, let's, if you're here at the end, let's come back to that in the second half. And Austin, a hand up there.
Very, very closely related, actually. But I hesitate before asking this because I have a feeling that I'm the least experienced facilitator in the room, but I would have imagined that it could also be valuable to use generative AI to ask for advice about how to motivate this group that you're having trouble, sort of activating the ideas, rather than start trying to do the work for them. So do you see where I'm going? It's similar to the last question.
I think I feel better about giving people a process. Like I think where it's really bad is, let's say there's a dispute in the room, or someone's pouty in the room or something like that. It's hard, I think, to quickly get something on the screen and it says like, come up to someone and smile at them and put your hand on their shoulder and tell them that you really appreciate them being here. I think that's harder to just sort of like quickly do and learn, whereas I think the process part of this is sort of easier. So I guess I sort of lean into the process, and at this point there's that I don't know that it's the human element, but it's stuff that just seems harder in terms of like motivation or whatever. I do think that like you could come home afterwards as a facilitator and be like, I was having a really hard time motivating that group. What are 10 ways that, I could use in this specific situation, whatever, and then probably digest that better. But yeah, I think that's part of how it's an advantage, to people in the profession here, that I maybe don't need 50 books on my shelf. I can just ask ChatGPT in that one specific scenario here. So let's see here. All right, I'm going to go back to having switched over to my transcript of what I did before. I'm going to try and run through this pretty quickly. Like I said, it's 30 pages. In essence, I'm saying, walk me through all these steps, and it keeps saying, okay, the next step is, and then I push back and I'm having it play both roles. And I say, yeah, I don't actually have my group. That was a lie. Can you do that work for me? And, in this case, it says, I'm choosing not just overall state of the economy and changes in customer preferences, but it's giving me an explanation of what those things are. I ask it again, what's the next step? It says future scenarios, you create alternative future scenarios. This is this is not me putting it in or ChatGPT putting it in. This is the diagram from the Liberating Structures website that I was like, basically it's a matrix. That's what I'm trying to show you. And that's what it's talking through. It doesn't actually create a picture. I just want people to sort of understand that's what it looks like. And then I have it create these 4 scenarios. So the 4 scenarios are, in essence, let's say, I forget what the ones are that it shows here, but let's say it's good economy, bad economy, high labor availability, low labor availability, right? So there's a world where the economy is really good and there's lots of, labor is plentiful. There's another world where the economy is terrible and also no one wants to work. I mean, it's sort of like the best case and worst case, right? And there's 4 of those scenarios for the 2 different matrices. And I say, can you create those? And then I say, can you come up with fun names for each one of those 4 quadrants? And it's like quadrant number 1, Pizza Prosperity Parade. and taste transformation tango. And it's like coming up with those. It's fun to do this with groups, but it takes time, right? Time is almost always the enemy, but it's doing that really quickly. So then I say, well, I know you asked us to come up with suggestions of what to do when labor is really available and the economy is good, and we should sit around in our group and we should come up with that, but we're having a hard time. So can you come up with some suggestions for us? And then it does that. So like, I forget, this is scenario number 3. It's coming up with a bunch of suggestions for us, right? We could still add to these. It could add to ours, but without us actually doing the work, it comes up with a pretty good list. It walks through. Again, I just keep saying, okay, great. What's the next step? It knows what the next step is. It prompts us again. And then it says, it says, I want you to review I want you to review all the strategies and tactics developed for each scenario and assess the potential impact, feasibility, and resource requirements for each metric. Produce a rating on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being the lowest and 5 being the highest. I don't know where it's coming up with the logic for this, but it does it, right? And so it says, and it's doing this, right? You've seen how fast it is. It's like in 2 seconds, potential impact 4, feasibility 3, resource requirements 3 for, this prosperity parade thing here, right? And then I say, but can you do that for each of the actual steps, right? So launch targeted advertising campaign. So I have it rank this. This would take forever to do with a group, and it would be really tedious. I don't know that this is actually all that productive to have it, done for us by ChatGPT, but the time difference is quite stunning, right? Particularly if we could train it on who our organization is and what we think is productive and, those other things. Here, it probably doesn't know, but it's pages, right? Like it goes through and it just has a thought and it's doing it. I don't know that I trust it, right? But it does it. And it does it for all these, right? Part of this is it's restricted by the character output and the character input. So I have to keep breaking it up instead of just do it all at once. And then I say at the end, right, this is a comment, this is part of the process. It says, well, but are there things that are common among all 4 of those quadrants that, you should do, because like, no matter what the future holds, you should do those things. And it says, yeah, so here's, these 4 things: conduct market research, enhance the online presence, implement customer feedback system, and foster a positive, inclusive work culture. Not super specific, pretty good. And then some other ones that are found in multiple boxes here. And then, I say, are there any that are so important that they would turn out to be an existential threat? It's like, not so much, but here's some other thoughts that I had for you. Conducting market research, we have to improve the online presence, and we have to improve customer feedback. And then again, I say, can you rank these things again? And it says, yeah, here's the top 10 priorities. And then, in essence, we're working through, and I'm saying, it says, well, the next step is you should come up with a plan, and you should have your employees actually figure out how to, actually execute this stuff. And I go, yeah, but maybe you could do this for us, right? Like, that's not the way we would usually do this. And so it then comes up with an action plan. And then it says, review the strategies and come up with like a message to write to your employees or to your stakeholders. And I say, I would love to write that message. This was such a good time. I'd love to write that message. But on the other hand, I'm the busy guy. Could you write that message for me? Could you do the report? Could you do the after action for me? And it says, yeah, sure, I could do that. And then it does that. And then it comes up with an action plan. And then I say, I'll call on you in a sec there. Is it Rabia? I'll call you in a sec. Trying to track chat at the same time here. It's hard, but I do see it. So this is kind of where I'm going to end this portion, is I just say, I'm a guy that loves making pizza puns. I'm the head of a pizza company. Could you make my thing funnier? And could you add pizza puns? So in 2 seconds, it comes up with my letter and adds pizza puns to it, right? We'll rise to the occasion and need success together. It doesn't really make sense, but like, it's pretty good, right? It has me sign off cheesy regards. We're serving up a livable wage, right? Like Dill Life, right? I mean, it's pretty good, right? It's pretty good. And then, I say, can I get a formal report out of that? What do we do? And then I say at the end, sort of typical part of this facilitation process, I go, how would you improve this process? I'm just a guy that runs a pizza shop. I came up with this thing. Someone told me about it. I went online. It sounded like a good idea. What else could we do? It says, yeah, here's 10 suggestions to come up with how to improve this process the next time you do it. Enhance the prep work, streamline facilitation techniques, define clear objectives, simplify language and instruction. Like, it's pretty good, right? Pretty good. And then I say, well, I really like this one. I really do like critical uncertainties, but if I didn't use this, could you give me some suggestions for other things that are similar that maybe we could try another time? And it says, yeah, here's your 3 to 5 suggestions, SWOT, scenario planning, design thinking, whatever, right? Goes through them. And now, now that the hand is up, let me jump over there. Rabia, you want to jump in there?
Save you. It's Rabia.
Rabia, one of 3. I was close.
So I use knowledge work to build trust and a way forward in meetings. And one of the things that I find challenging about ChatGPT is precisely that it doesn't expose the algorithm and how it gets from A to Z.
Yeah.
How would you use it so that you're actually using the meeting time to build that sense of connection and trust?
Oh, it was $1 million question, right? I mean, the first thing that I would say is, for me, I always feel like my biggest enemy is time. So if I can cut down on some of the grunt work stuff and get to some of the other stuff, I would try and do that. That's me, but I also realize I'm talking a lot. Does someone else have an answer to that question that you want to jump in and share? I feel like there are smarter people than me in this room here. Someone? Keith, I saw you come up.
I'm thinking about all the critical uncertainty projects I've done, and there's a lot of them. And I wouldn't trade in any of the hard work required by group members to figure out what their critical uncertainties are, which are the most interesting ones to put so that they can generate strategies. All of those are incredibly important to develop both critical and generative thinking. So Lee, as you're talking, I was like, really mixed emotions about the added value. And I think you really would give something up if you were the expert facilitator, and then you added on to that the expert facilitator, ChatGPT or similar large language model, and you didn't really distribute the use. Like right now, you kind of distributed the use of ChatGPT to participants in this session. That's super useful for certain questions being explored. Like, so yeah, you're definitely giving up something, but I think you don't have to give it all up if you distribute the use of the large language model to the participants doing the work, right?
Yeah.
So you develop options, and Elise is really good at help me with this. Develop the options with a distributed group using ChatGPT, and then some choices about what you're actually going to use as your, let's say, your top critical uncertainties, or what are you going to do in that particular future. Those are choices that the group has to own, and they can't be given over to the expert facilitator, or in my view, the expert facilitator or the expert accumulator, scraper, ChatGPT.
Yeah. I mean, in this case, I woke up, it was like a Saturday morning, and I was like, what of this could be replaced or how could this be used? I think personally, I'm much more likely to use it where like we might have small groups and they've got laptops or something, or they're sitting around and when it comes to let's generate some ideas, they're working together and maybe they put stuff into there, they pull stuff out of it. I think this model of, where it's wearing both hats of prompt people, but then also do the work is probably not realistic. But I also think I don't know what's going to happen at General Electric when they get ChatGPT and they go, we got to do strategic planning. Let's just have it do this stuff. Like, I think they might do this, right? So, yeah.
They kind of do it already. Conventional strategic planning is handled by a small number of experts who come in and tell the companies what to do. More or less. I worked with a Global Business Network. They used to hire Peter Schwartz and various people. The long view, was the popular consulting model. And they basically handed it over to the expert, sometimes external consultant of all things, plus the already control heavy thinking of the top leadership.
Yeah. Where it's not a system that's unleashed already, right? It's a very like top-down system. Yeah. Totally.
So if you use a distributed learning methodology or just, to accentuate over controlled top down, you're sort of doubling down on the same set of problems.
Yeah. Let's see here. I am trying to be mindful of the time. So let me wrap up sort of part one, and then we'll try and look at part two quickly here. Part one, I just want to ask you this. I'm going to use Wow Wish Wonder, which maybe some of you have used before. I've only used it a couple times, but we've spent about an hour going through some of this stuff. Sort of the wow, I think this is terrible, or this is amazing, or I'm scared about whatever, right? I wish something, I wonder something. And let me give you a moment just to think about those couple things. Then my plan is to take just a couple minute break, let people get some water or something, go to the bathroom, and then do another breakout and talk about some other stuff in depth after this. Let me have you all just drop in a thought in the chat, or all three of your thoughts or something like that, in terms of something you something you wish, wonder, or are wowed by, I guess. This feels a little anticlimactic, but as you're doing that, I'm just going to say thank you all for coming. We will go for another 20 minutes, but I know often what happens is people plan for about an hour and we lose people. So I just want to be mindful of that. And then the second part, we're going to try some stuff again. I'm going to put in some breakouts. So hopefully we'll have enough folks with a system hooked up just to look at sort of, it's a very meta look to ask ChatGPT or Bard or something else what we see as the future of facilitation relative to the pros and the cons with generative AI. Sort of talk through some of that. But if you are dropping off here, thank you all for coming. And if you are staying, let me give you all just about, I'm going to say 3 minutes, not very much time, but maybe enough to run to the bathroom or check on the kids or something like that. And I will see you back here at 2:15 Eastern. Yes. And I forgot to hook up I'll set an alarm here for that too.
Yeah, Lee, I've got a few more minutes, but super fun to see what you're doing, what you did with this particular one. Yeah, it's funny. I really wouldn't. I love what AI can do, and I love some of the things Elisa's done with stories that can be generated. There's just really fun things, and just reflecting, I'm repeating what I said about clients doing the work. they complained it was hard. Sometimes it was easy. But each of the little turning points in critical uncertainties, they did it and they owned it. And I've had that example in the book. The pipeline is flowing or not, and do we have copyright or protection or not of the products we create?
Right.
That took the leadership group 15 or 10 minutes to generate those critical uncertainties.
Yeah.
And then when we got to, well, what are you going to do in the scenario in which there's very few products coming through the pipeline and we can't protect them, the nightmare scenario.
Yeah.
They were wildly imaginative. They didn't need Chat GPT. they were there all the way. And so in some cases, as I was listening, I was reflecting on these different experiences that it would have just totally clunked up that experience.
Yeah.
Another place, they got stuck. They could have really benefited by a thinking aid.
Yeah. Elise, yeah.
So it feels to me, based on what you're saying, Keith, and our experiences, like we're familiar with the groan zone, right? And the incredible value of wrestling with deep problems and hard thoughts. And it's uncomfortable. So as we continue to evolve into a society where the instant gratification of, I don't even have to write my own emails, nor read the emails that are sent to me, have my digital assistant summarize what I have to care about, continues, and our ability to work through discomfort continues to shrink. How do we find the best places to bring a group into the groan zone? Like, when is it warranted? I think is really a critical conversation, because it's going to be groanier than it's ever been.
And it's coming fast. It's very fast.
Right.
Yeah. That was my very fast 3 minutes to go to a very fast bathroom break. So we've got 14 minutes left. It's never as much time as I want. I am going to say, at least, can you just create a couple breakout groups, and hopefully with a distribution of asterisks as stars in people's names. I'm going to say I had planned to do this as 2 separate breakout rooms or 2 separate series. And I'm just going to say, for even groups, I want you to ask sort of the negative question, and for odd groups, I guess the positive question, and just to see what you come up with ChatGPT or Bard or whatever you're using, something like that. So those are my suggestions for prompts. I would say use whatever you want and throw different stuff at it. Or you're welcome to just talk about it on your own. I think like part of what I was hoping today is people would see it and try it and use it and try and break it and whatever else. So, you don't have to use ChatGPT, but if you want to get in the room and just talk or do that, then that's great. And let's do it for 8 minutes. Probably the smaller the groups we have, the better, but whatever the arrangement is there. I guess, honestly, if we don't have the ChatGPT stuff in every room, that's fine. People can just talk about it, but give us a little bit of time to debrief it at the end. If you want to stay for another 2 hours, we'll do that. But whenever you're ready, Elise, you can put folks in there.
All right, 8 minutes. Have fun.
Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. So let's try and do 3 things at once with the 3 minutes we have left. I'm going to ask you if you have some thoughts, or from your group, if you want to drop those into chat. I think it would just be interesting to sort of see or hear from everyone. And then if somebody would want to just speak up and share quickly what you thought about or what your group talked about, that would be great. And also, I just want to show you the thing that I am sharing Am I still sharing it? I think so. Yeah. I just fed it in some of the feedback that you gave it. And then I said, like, take out the names and create a report. And I did that as I was talking to Elise, mostly paying attention. So, like, I haven't really looked it over, but, you know, just that reporting functionality, which I think for many of us is kind of obnoxious to say, like, here's a lot of the stuff that we came up with. Can you give me something to work with? That's what that is. So anyway, thoughts from your groups. Someone want to speak up? Dave. You're on mute though, Dave. Dave.
We were in a negative group, and our first discussion was that AI doesn't need to do anything to diminish the profession of facilitators, less money, less work. I think it's kind of happening on its own. Half true, half joke. But we started getting into how we are really bad at uncertainties and imagining something other than what, or the people that we might facilitate, and imagining a world other than we're working in today. We're just generally bad at that. So Keith was bringing that up. And then I said, well, isn't this kind of meta? We're sitting here talking about a future in which there's less facilitation, but we're having a hard time imagining what AI is gonna do to that. But what if the model changes? We've been using design thinking for a really long time, not in every facilitation method, but for something like if the focus of facilitation moves more towards an uncertainty type of thinking, I think AI could be really good for helping us do that, maybe better than even a facilitator could in developing uncertainties or circumstances that we have a hard time imagining today, what our future our work might look like.
Yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, for real. Maybe a positive room. There's no positive. This is the old facilitator trick where, like, they tell you that if you just wait long enough, someone will speak up. You guys are testing me here. All right, I'm not going to push it because we're right at 2:30. So I am going to close with something that I asked ChatGPT to do earlier. This is one of these like pre things that I did. I had it come up with, like, I believe that you should end meetings in a way that's memorable instead of just like, all right, well, that's the end of the meeting. Goodbye. So sometimes I've been reading like Dr. Seuss, and I do stuff like that, that hopefully is relevant to the meeting itself. So I asked it to come up with just some rhyming couplets about what I thought was going to happen here today. And this is what it came up with. We gathered online to explore a topic of great import, the future of AI. Our minds did sort through discussions critical and breakout chats insightful. We pondered the challenges and opportunities in sight. With minds from all over the world, we shared and learned, though some were wide awake and others yawned and yearned. As we close this journey, let's reflect and say, AI is here to stay, but we humans have a vital role to play.
Yeah.
From the human side of me, thank you all so much for attending. Like I said, this initially came up because I became sort of feverishly attached to what this all meant, and Elise was good enough to give me a platform to talk about it with other people that I think also care about it. And I don't know what the answers are, but it is a changing world out there, and I'm curious where this will all be in the future. So thanks for helping me make some sense of it today. Happy to hang out and answer some questions or chat afterwards. Thank you all for sticking around though.
Thank you.